It is.
And Joao here to talk us through the next three wines, the next three Italian wines. Joao, what glass would you serve these Italian varieties in?
Okay, I believe, again, we got three different wines. You got a Barolo, you got a Chianti, and you got a Nebbiolo. I believe Barolo we should use in the Burgundy glass, myself. The Nebbiolo and also the Chianti, I believe we should use in the Bordeaux style glass. So big glass, deep, wide. So when you put the wines in, all around comes through, because I believe also with this wine it's very different than Australian wine, very dry, no fruity, so it needs to open up a little bit more in there. And I believe this one you should decant it too, special if they're a bit old. The young ones, I believe we should just put them in the glass and just drink them. What do you think?
Yeah, no.
Well, I was going to say, Joao, what do you like so much about Italian wines, and what is your favourite variety?
Oh, my favorite variety is the Barolo, actually. I believe Barolo, it's a very well-known wine around the world. I always compare to a nice Burgundy, and I always believe, and I tell the members in the club, if you want to spend a little bit less money, you can buy a nice Barolo, sometimes half the price of the Burgundy, and as is good.
Yeah.
So that's what I believe these days, because as you know, Burgundies, they are beautiful wines, but they are very expensive. And with the Barolos, you can buy a nice Barolo for half a price and probably as good. What do you think?
That's certainly the case. I think the thing to remember about Italian reds, as a pretty widespread generalist comment, is that there's a lot of things about them that are quite different to the traditional Australian style, whereas a lot of people would know Australian reds as being big, juicy, full, soft, a bit alcoholic. With Italian reds, that's not the case. Italian reds are lower in alcohol. They have high acidity and high tannin all at the same time. Yep. So acidity is that thing that gives you the sour sharpness. Tannin is that dryness. Think of a cup of tea made with 2 tea bags. And Italian reds deliver that tannin, that acidity, in a lighter, more abrasive style, much more light-bodied, much less generous than Australian wines. On the other hand, their persistence is wonderful. So after you have a sip of a good Italian red and swallow it, you can taste it for a long time afterwards. And the wonderful persistence means that those Italian reds go with quite strong foods, and so teaming up to strong pasta dishes and meats, and of course antipasto and all the wonderful game things. The combinations of Italian wine and Italian food are legendary, wouldn't you say?
I think so. That's why I believe wines like this style, nice and dry and healthy, they goes very well with antipastos, like Mr. Corrigan said, like the presunto, the salamis, the cheeses. I think it's a very good combination, and I believe that's why the winemakers in that side of the world, that's how they produce the wines their way. So the characteristics is there with that style of food. Even with the pizza, I believe these days, let's say the Isola Olena we got here, this Chianti, will be very interesting to drink with the pizza, because it's got not the fruit in there, but it's got the savory.
Yeah, so the savory character.
It will very well. Yep. With the Barolos, again, I believe Barolo can drink with anything. As a young student at school in Lisbon, I believe the teacher used to say to me, you have to have fish with white wine, but I believe these days, whatever you fancy, you drink it. I know I can be wrong, but sometimes they have Shiraz with oysters and nothing goes very well, you know? So.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I think flexibility with food and wine matching is important.
Really?
Yeah, what's wrong with being radical about wine and food? Now, we've got them in the order that we suggest you try the wines as well. So we think that you would try the Nebbiolo for starters, and then the Isola Olena, which is the Chianti, as the second wine, and then the Monforte wine is the third wine. And you should be able to see an increase in the juiciness and the general richness of wines as you increase across these three wines. You mentioned before your favourite variety, so here we have Nebbiolo, the famous red grape, or one of the famous red grapes of the Piemonte region in the northwest of Italy.
That's right.
The most famous region there is Barolo, next door Barbaresco, and then the general area around there called Langhe, and you can get wonderful Langhe Nebbiolo for a fraction of the price that you'd have to pay for Barolo. And when you try this wine, you'll see the interesting tarry, chestnut, savoury cherry with a kind of a floral overtone. Very interesting variety, Nebbiolo, and it ages very slowly and wonderful with a lot of those savoury foods. It's intriguing. Very non-traditional taste if you're a traditional Australian drinker. If you love the wines of McLaren Vale and the Barossa Valley, say, big rich Shirazes, you'll find this style of wine savoury and quite different, which is what it's meant to be. The second wine is Chianti Classico, which is the heart of the Tuscany region. One of the best known producers here, Isole e Olena, quite a modern producer. I myself judge wine in wine shows where the winemaker, in fact two of the winemakers for Isole e Olena were overseas guest judges brought out by the Australian Wine Show to judge and interact here, and one of these winemakers in particular did time working at an Australian winery. They're a very well-known, very famous Chianti producer, and you'll see on the Chianti here a softer, richer, more red cherry savoury aroma compared to the Nebbiolo. This wine is made of Sangiovese, pretty high acid style, but nonetheless a lovely food wine, a bit softer, a bit more in the mid palate. Probably leaning more towards the model of Pinot Noir than you'd find with a Nebbiolo. And then the third wine, we're going back to Piemonte now, but to a very region of its own identity with its own varieties, and this is the Montfort, and you'll see this wine having a darker cherry, softer, richer style, and you'll see the stepping up of the juiciness of these three wines, and it gives you an array of some Italian tastes, all from the centre and the north, and perhaps it's a tasting on another day where we go to other parts of Italy, because if you start talking Italian wine, there are dozens and dozens of fabulous wines from Italy.
I believe Italy is probably one of the most countries in the world. It's got more grapes than any other country in the world. They have more than 120 different variety grapes. So most of the ones in Italy also, it's when you, not in Australia, but when you go to Italy and you do the tours, you see some grapes there you never heard before anywhere. So, and some of the ones they make with 5% there, 10% there, 5 there. And they're very interesting ones to drink. So I believe also that's why here in the club at the moment, me and Mr. Corrigan, we're trying to bring all these beautiful wines from overseas to introduce to our clients, so they can see the difference. And some of them, when they have the first sip, they go oh, but the second sip they will say, oh, this is pretty good actually. Let's have another bottle. The good thing is these ones you can drink maybe 2 bottles because the alcohol is not so high, and like in Australia, the wines here they are very alcoholic in content. So I believe between 2 people you can have a nice 2 bottles of wine.
These wines are lovely.
Thank you.